The steady price increases around the country are hampering homeownership. Despite more Americans owning a home now than 10 years ago, the gap between black homeownership rates and other racial groups is getting wider. That is according to the National Association of Realtors. Most recent data shows the homeownership rate for white Americans was 73% in 2021, but the rate for black Americans, 44%. The homeownership rate for Asian Americans was 63%, and for Hispanic Americans, it was 51%. I want to remind you again, black folk, 44%. All racial groups saw homeownership rates increase over the last decade, but the rate for black Americans had the slowest growth. Investing in a home is one of the ways families can build generational wealth. So what can be done to make the American dream of owning a property more attainable? Joining me now is Charles J Nunan. He's the founder of the Landbank Team, a real estate developer, and the author of Hacking Land Bank Properties. Welcome to the show, my brother. Thank you for weighing in with your expertise here. What started your journey toward building generational wealth?
Well, it's just that. It's a lack of home ownership amongst individuals in our community, but it goes a little bit deeper. I have two children, 17 and 22 years old, and I realized the increase that you spoke about earlier in my neighborhood, my immediate neighborhood, which is downtown Brooklyn. And one of the things that I noticed was if I don't help my children get ahead as far as being able to get the money to afford the properties in downtown Brooklyn, they probably won't own a home and they'll become renters and further worse than that stat that you mentioned about us owning at 44%. So it was really my kids who just drove this initiative.
That's important because, children help you lay it really plain, right? It becomes very clear what the needs are, what your desires are. You want to leave the world better for them than it was for you. And over decades, centuries even, black folk have tried to do that. And yet the gap is often moving in the wrong direction. Why do you think that is? Why is the wealth gap for the black community so vast as opposed to other communities?
Well, one of the things that we have to realize is that other nationalities have been participating in home ownership far longer than we have. In my opinion, or studies show, we really started to focus on generational wealth and building out the model of home ownership just as recently as 50 years ago. It hasn't been that long since we really dug in and took home ownership seriously. In fact, I read an article from the New York Times recently that was just put out that said African-American Gen Zers between the ages of 18 and 25 are living at home and they don't plan to move anytime soon. They're actually normalizing coming back home. So I created the Landbank Team so that we could really
that must be scary for you.
To buy.
You got some kids that's right in that age range, bro. That's the real reason you try to get everybody a crib. You want them outside of yours.
So exactly, that's exactly what I was thinking. So I found what land banks are and what land bank properties are. And they're deemed as problem properties or vacant properties. And I put together a group of individual investors called the Landbank Team so that we could focus on home ownership, but not only focus on home ownership, but focus on home ownership that we could keep, focusing on home ownership that's debt-free. What the stat you talked about that we own at 44% doesn't mention is the foreclosure rate. So I feel one of the things that we can do to tighten up and close the wealth gap is to start to buy the homes that we can afford. And there's nothing wrong with buying the homes that are at the bottom that cost the least, because at least we own them, we'll own them outright. I bought them so that they could generate passive income so that my kids can afford to live in New York City like I do and not have to move really, really far or just pay these sky high rents in Manhattan and downtown Brooklyn. So that was my purpose. But I think we could really close
have to live in New Jersey. Yuck. Let me half kidding Jersey people. Look, why is it important for young people to invest, right? I mean, I get the part for you. You're building for your children. You're trying to help in generational wealth, construct it. But there's a way that you've also emphasized the importance of young people investing now, of young people getting invested in real estate.
Absolutely. So what I realized, and it all goes back to the statistics, right? We can no longer, as an African-American people, leave our kids to doing things by themselves. We have to participate in some, it's borderline enabling, but at the same time, in order for them to compete, we have to put them in a position to make them financially literate and get them education in real estate and the know-how with the tools to invest so that when it comes time for them to move, let's just say 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25, they already have the education. They won't lose their homes at the alarming rate that African Americans lose their homes. And then if we buy early, we could kind of hedge the inflation that's going to come. Just imagine, Mark, if you bought your house that you live in or the place that you live in at 21 years old versus whatever age you bought it, right? So what happens is where I live, let's just say downtown Brooklyn in the brownstone I live in today, I bought it way under $1 million. Today, it's worth more than $2.4 million. So it's important that we invest early because as we know in the real estate asset class, the prices never go down. The interest rates may fluctuate, but the prices just don't go down as much as we'd like them to.
Wow, that's for sure, man. The advice you're giving us, man, is so helpful, so instructive, and it's even inspirational. It makes me think all the work I have to do, one, to make sure my kids don't come back home, and two, to make sure that we build that intergenerational wealth, and of course, three, so we never have to live in New Jersey. Charles Nunan, founder of the Landbank Team, a real estate developer, and the author of Hacking Land Bank Properties. My brother, thank you for joining us. All right, family, we have reached the end of the show, but before I let you go, several of our guests tonight have talked about intergenerational wealth, building wealth, sharing wealth. You know, we don't need billionaires in our society. I don't believe we need billionaires in the world. For every billionaire, there's a whole lot of people who have caught hell economically and socially. So I don't want that, but I do want us to be able to own our own homes. I do want us to be able to pass on something to our children that makes life more livable and more sustainable. We shouldn't be living hand to mouth generation after generation. And so I think it's important for us to teach financial literacy to our children. Yes, it's important to have these programs. Yes, it's important to have these structures, but we in our own community have to organize and do this. The school doesn't teach it. And as a result, so many people in our community are getting payday loans. They're getting credit cards from celebrities that actually don't help their credit and exploit them economically. We go to check cashing places when we could go to a bank. We're paying percentages on money that we don't have for people who don't have our best interests at heart. We have to organize each other. If you have financial literacy, share it. If you have a lot of money, like my executive producer, share it. But at all moments, make sure that your commitment isn't just to protecting your wealth, but to making sure that it spreads in the community in ways that leave everybody's lives just a little bit better.